If you're doing something low on your values, you're automatically devaluing yourself. You're automatically draining yourself. Your energy goes down. Your mitochondria lose the ATP the second you do lower value systems. Every human being, regardless of age, gender, spectrum, or culture, moment by moment is living with a set of priorities, a set of values, things that are most to least important in their life. And that set of values is completely unique to each individual. It's not possible to have the exact same set of values. Maybe similar, but even if you say the word business is important or family is important, there's different components of what those mean. So there's still a distinction. And so therefore, every set of values an individual has is like a fingerprint specific set. If any two people are exactly the same, one's not necessary on the planet. But we're like a snowflake or a retinal pattern or a voice print. Now this hierarchy of values or set of values, ranging from that which is most important to least important, higher in priority, lower in priority, higher in value, lower in value, is what is dictating our perceptions of the world, because we're filtering our reality through that. All of our sensory input goes through our sensory receptors, go into the spinal cord or the brainstem, and go up into the higher areas of the brain, go into the thalamus, get filtered through a value filtering process, and decides to go up in the cortex to be conscious aware, or go into more amygdala responses to have unconscious impulsive responses. So we're literally living our lives through these value structures. And whatever's highest on our value, we tend to absorb that information sensory-wise. We tend to make decisions more efficiently, and we are more likely to take actions. So we're disciplined, reliable, and focused on what we value most, and we are procrastinative, hesitative, and frustrating on things that we value less. Although when we were valuing things that are life-threatening, a more primitive part of the brain, you might say, or lower part of the brain, subcortical part of the brain fires off, and we're there for fight or flight and rest and digest for quick responses. But our highest value, the very highest value, the thing that's most important in our life at any moment, is the most intrinsic value. Why? Because our identity revolves around it, and also we spontaneously are inspired to act upon it. Now, in my case, my highest value is teaching. If you look very carefully, 7 days a week I'm teaching, and sometimes 18 hours in a day. So my highest value is that. I love doing that. That's inspiring to me. So I spontaneously am inspired to do it. You don't have to motivate me to teach. I don't need any extrinsic motivation to get me to go and do that. And if you look very carefully, whatever's highest on your value, your identity revolves around. I want you to really think about that. If somebody was to come up to me and say, Dr. Demartini, teacher, I would immediately go, yep. But what's really low on my value, cooking, driving. If you were to say, Dr. Demartini, driver, I wouldn't relate to it. I go, that's a disowned part. Dr. Demartini, the cook, no, haven't cooked since I was 24 and haven't driven a car in 32 years. So I don't relate to those. So those are disowned parts. The lower a value is on your value system, the more it is disowned. And the higher it is on the value system, the more it's owned as an identity. So an intrinsic value, your identity revolves around. So whatever's highest on your value, if somebody was to say it, you feel, yeah, that's me. So mine is teacher. So if you call me a teacher, I go, yep, that's me. It makes sense. That's the most probable thing I'm doing in my life. I don't need to be motivated to do it. It's intrinsically called to do it. So finding out what's highest on your value and accessing the most intrinsic value and finding out where you spontaneously are inspired to act, not react, but act, where you're actually most inspired to do things. That's where you're going to excel the most. And that's what your identity revolves around. So, you know, for 50 years, I've been involved in teaching. And so my identity revolves around that. I have no problem, identifying by that nature, a teacher. If somebody was to say, who are you? What do you do? I would say, I'm a teacher. So my life demonstrates. Your life demonstrates what you value most. And finding out what that is and prioritizing your life towards that is very empowering, because Anytime you do what's ever highest on your value, your self-worth goes up. Anytime you do something that's highest on your value, your confidence goes up, your self-worth goes up, your achievements go up. You expand in your space and time horizons and give yourself permission to expand and do more and have confidence and certainty. Your leadership emerges. I'm a leader in the field of teaching because it's my intrinsic value. In addition to that, you also get the blood glucose and oxygen into the forebrain. The second you live by your highest values, the blood glucose and oxygen goes into the forebrain, and you wake up the executive center, which is involved in inspiring vision. So you become a visionary. Those with a vision flourish, those without a vision perish. You become strategically planning, so you become more objective. You're more likely to be objective in your relationships with people. That means you're not subjectively biasing yourself with superiorities or inferiority complexes, and you're more likely to be level with people and love people for who they are when you're living that way. So it flourishes as far as your relationships with people. That impacts business or social life or family life or learning or whatever it is. It helps you fulfill your life more. It also activates that executive center for execution. So that's why you spontaneously act. You don't need to be motivated. If you need to be motivated to do what you say is important, what you say is important isn't important. But that intrinsic value is the most important value to know. It is the one that accesses the most objective state, the most centered state. What's interesting, as far as resilience and adaptability, it's maximized when you fulfill your highest value and live according to that, because you're most neutral. And see, when you're not neutral and you're highly polarized with subjective bias, you fear the loss of the things you label good, and you fear the gain of the things you label evil. And when you're more living by your highest values, you transcend it. You're meta-ethical. You tend to transcend those labels. You don't judge people. You love people, and you realize that they have two sides. And so labeling them and putting them in a box and rigiding and narrowing your minds and contextualizing them as good or bad doesn't mean anything. Somebody who's living by their highest value. They realize that no matter what happens, they can win out of it. They're resourceful. They're resilient. They're adaptable. They expand their space and time horizons, as I said, and they give themselves permission to lead and do something amazing. Living by your highest value is one of the most powerful things I could teach people, which is one of the reasons I have on my website, drdemartini.com, a value determination process that's complimentary, that's private, to help people go and determine what that value is. If you've never used it, please go and take advantage of that, because it's eye-opening. Do it again a week from now and a month from now, and every 3 months, do it again, and keep records of them so you can see the evolution of your values, because they're tweaking and changing throughout your life. When I was a child, baseball was important, but then surfing was important to me. Now teaching for the last 50 years has been important. I may have another thing that's later on in my life that might evolve. But right now, whatever's highest on your value, whatever's intrinsic, your identity revolves around. And that's where you maximize your epistemological knowledge. That's where you grow your knowledge most. That's why you're most expert in that area. So it gives you a core competence and allows you to have a competitive advantage and a awareness there. And your teleological purpose, your purpose and mission in life, which is intrinsic to you, is always a reflection of what you value most. So my mission is to teach around the world and research every single day and teach. That's what I love doing. I can't think of anything else I'd rather be doing. People say, why do you do that all the time? Because I love it. Why would I not do it? Why wouldn't you structure your life where you're living according to what you value most? Why not do something that inspires you? When you're doing something spontaneously inspires you, you can't wait to get up in the morning and be doing it. And people can't wait to get that service. And you tap dance to work, as Buffett says, because you get up and you're inspired to do it. We've all met people in grocery stores or malls or shopping centers or someplace where you could see people that were engaged and inspired, or at work in any capacity where they're engaged and inspired by what they do. And you can tell. I remember when I was living in New York for a while, sometimes I'd take a car service, sometimes a yellow cab. And I'd ask yellow cab drivers, how long you been doing a yellow cab and driving? They look in the mirror and they go, 10 years, man. I go, you love it? And they go, pays the bills, man. And usually their car was not the most clean. It wasn't taken care of. They didn't value their career so much. It was just a job. And then you met somebody in the cab that you say, well, how long have you been doing it? 24 years. I said, you love it? Absolutely. My father did it. My grandfather did it. It's a tradition in our family to drive the cabs. I love it. I know every street in this place. I know here's my card. If I can do any service 24 hours a day, I will get up for you. I mean, they're inspired by what they do, and you engage in it. You want to get their card and you want to refer people to them, and it just expands. Our life expands when we're living intrinsically, and it contracts when we don't. It's really quite interesting. So identifying that intrinsic value, your real identity, it's a non-derivative value. It's not coming from outside shoulds, ought to, supposed to's, got to's, have to's, and must from society. It's an intrinsic action, something you love doing, something that just comes from within. You have in the brain, you have evoked potentials from outside stimuli, and you have spontaneous potentials from within. When you're living according to your highest value, your spontaneous potentials go up and you're more balanced. And your autonomic nervous system, your sympathetic, which is fight or flight, and your parasympathetic, which is rest and digest, come into perfect balance. When you do, instead of the day fight or flight responses and sympathetic, which is a beta waves in the brain, and the delta waves when your parasympathetic's on, you get an alpha theta, which is right in the middle. You get betas at 13 cycles per second hertz. You get 3 for delta, and you get right about 7 to 8, around 8 cycles per second for alpha theta. In that state, you get gamma bursts, you get eureka moments, you get inspirations, you get ahas. You're inspired by your life. And your brain was more synchronous. There's more coherency. There's more physiological balance. There's circadian rhythms in your physiology are maximized. Your health is empowered. Every area of your life is empowered by that state of living according to your highest values. That's why every talk I ever give on these programs, these weekly programs, and also live seminars, you won't have me do a talk without talking about values, and particularly that intrinsic value. The highest value is your most intrinsic value, where your most identity is. Your ontological identity revolves around it. Your teleological purpose revolves around it. Your epistemological knowledge revolves around it. Your area of expertise, your leadership skills, your expanded awareness, your enlightenment state, all revolve around that highest value. That's your true identity. That's your true authentic self. That's your, and I believe that every symptom in the body physiologically is trying to get us there. It's trying to offer us feedback, because anytime we're not living by our highest value, our intrinsic value, and going into lower values, derivative values, we automatically create symptom in our physiology. Now, how? As you go down the list of values into lower values, they become more and more and more extrinsic. And you think about it, when you have a teenage boy who loves video games, you don't have to remind him to do the video games. You don't have to motivate him. You don't have to punish him if he doesn't do it, and reward him if he does. He just does it. But if you were telling him to do his chores or his homework or clean his room, you may have to externally motivate him. Anything that needs external motivation, an external derived source to get people to move and do things, is a derivative value. It's an extrinsic value. It's lower in values. In a hierarchy, as Hartman described, the hierarchy of values, intrinsic always overrides extrinsic. But the extrinsic values that are lower on the value list, in my case, would be cooking or driving. You'd have to motivate me to cook or drive. I'm not going to do it spontaneously. If you told me that I could speak in front of 100,000 people if I cooked a tomato or something, or baked a potato or whatever, I'd probably do it. But you'd have to motivate me to go do something like that. And most of the time, I learned a long time ago, don't waste your time on low priority things. Fill your day with high priority things. Delegate lower priority things to people who love to do those things that's high on their values. Because if it's high on their values, they'll do a greater job than you will. They'll be inspired to do it. You'll surround yourself with inspiring people. You'll liberate yourself from things that weigh you down, that are drudgery to you, that you have to be motivated to do. Motivation is not a solution for human beings. It's a symptom. It's a sign of doing something that's not inspiring. A quiet life of desperation, not a life of inspiration. I do whatever I can to help people. And in my Breakthrough Experience program, and every talk I do, trying to help people live an inspired, intrinsic life. And so if you're doing something low on your values, you're automatically devaluing yourself. You're automatically draining yourself. Your energy goes down. Your mitochondria lose the ATP the second you do lower value systems. And people that are sitting there subordinating to the world around them, putting people on pedestals and thinking, well, that person's smarter than me, and that person's more successful, that person's more wealthy, that person's more stable in their relationship, that person's more socially connected, that person's more physically fit and pretty, that person's more spiritually aware. The moment you minimize yourself to everybody around you, you'll inject their values, which are derivative values. You'll cloud the clarity of your own mission, because now you can't see it because you're so bombarded by all these expectations that are injected. You'll inculcate the herd instead of being heard. You'll try to fit in instead of stand out. You've lost your identity. You're not objective. You're now unfulfilled. You're in your amygdala, which is a lower brain system, subcortical area of the brain, it now wants to avoid pain and seek pleasure. It wants to polarize. It wants to be biased. It wants to judge. It wants to be prejudiced. It wants to discriminate. It wants to avoid anything that challenges its values and seek anything that does it. It goes towards impulsive behaviors, addictive behaviors, consuming. It makes you overspend and wipe out your wealth. It makes you overeat, makes you wipe out your health. It makes you go and have lust. All the passions that are so popularly talked about, which are sources of suffering, are a result of the amygdala's response, not the executive function. And the second we live in our lower values, we end up devaluing ourselves, depreciating ourselves. It's useful when we're under an emergency temporarily, but not as a way of life. You know, if somebody, the car's about to hit you, you want that part of the body to get the heck out of there. But you don't want to make your life decided by impulses and instincts. You want your life to be decided by your intuitions and inspirations. When you live by your highest values, your intuition is stronger and your inspirations are bigger. But if you live by lower values, you lose sight of those. You're no longer inspired. You're not intuitive. Your impulses and instincts running you. You're trying to divide things up, and you're into judgments and subjective biases as a survival mechanism, false positives, false negatives, subjective confirmation bias, subjective disconfirmation bias. You put people into in-group and out-groups. You misread people, mislabel people. You end up being more narcissistic or altruistic, sacrificing others for you or sacrificing you for others. You don't have sustainable fair exchange. Your relationships break down and you wonder what's going on. And then you think you blame external sources and you have false attribution biases on everything around you instead of look within for your own prioritization and your own selection. And as long as you exaggerate people or minimize people on the outside, you're going to minimize and exaggerate yourself and not be yourself. And everybody wants to be loved and appreciated for who they are. How are you going to do that when you're living extrinsically? Not going to happen. So that's why I tell people automatically to live by your highest values and prioritize your life, because if you live by your highest priorities, you grow in self-worth. You grow and your net worth even grows, because that's where you're most objective, most likely to have sustainable fair exchange in your transactions with people, where people want to continue to do business with you. People are engaged, you're engaged, people want to refer to you. You end up with more social connections and power, more business opportunities. You're more magnetic in relationships. You're more likely to be selective and get a quality relationship. There's so many, I could go for days on the benefit of that. In the Breakthrough Experience program that I teach constantly, week after week after week, taught 1,150 times around the world. That program is where I actually explain to you how to determine those values, how to structure your life according to them, how to delegate lower part of things, how to prioritize your systems, how to live more objectively with the executive center, how to have foresight, not living in hindsight, how to empower your life instead of disempower it. Because as long as we're judging, we're disempowered. We have emptiness, never fulfillment. You can't have fulfillment judging. You have fulfillment by loving. So I explained in that program how to love, how to appreciate. I show you how to not subordinate to people or subordinate to people, how to ordinate with people. I explain you how to manifest things by concentrating on real goals. If you exaggerate yourself, you'll set too big a goal in too short a time frame and undermine your life. If you minimize yourself, you'll end up setting too small goals in too long a time frame, and you'll hold back your achievements. But if you're being authentic, you'll set real goals, real times, real strategies, and achieve something. So in the Breakthrough Experience, I teach people how to set real goals in real time that help them manifest what it is that they want, that are true objectives and not fantasies, and that lead to nightmares. The fantasy world is where most people do. People are depressed because they're comparing their current reality to a fantasy that they're addicted to. And if they put people on pedestals and inject their values and they try to be like them and envy them and imitate them and try to fit in, they got a fantasy that they're going to try to live outside their own values. And your perception, decisions, or actions are based on your values. So you're not going to fulfill your life unless you live by your highest value. That's why I spend so much time in the Breakthrough Experience, making sure that people learn the mastery of that. Because that is one thing. If there's anything you get from this little presentation or any programs I do, get that. That is a gold mine. I basically delegated everything but teach, research, and write. I travel around the world and I teach, research, and write. And I'm a believer that that's the way to have more vital energy. My energy is very high throughout the day, every day, 7 days a week, because of that. And your energy is infinite once you recognize that source. So if you'd like to have more vitality and energy, you'd like to end up having more awakened creativity, because when you live by your highest values, that's when you are pursuing challenges that inspire you and you're stretching out, waking up your genius. And you're also going to have more fair exchange. It's going to help you in your business. It's going to help you in your finance. It's going to help you in your relationships. It's going to help you in your leadership. It's going to help you in your health and well-being and vitality. You're not going to age as much every time you live by your highest value, your aging drops. Every time lower values, your aging goes up, because it's negentropy when life physics, when you're living by your highest values, and entropy when you're living by your lower values. And you'll be inspired. And that's your spiritual quest. Anybody that's fulfilling their highest value is inspired, and that's their spiritual contribution to the world, whatever that may be, raising a family or running a business or whatever it may be. But you can empower all 7 areas of your life. And any area you don't empower, somebody's going to overpower you. And they're going to overpower you to frustrate you enough to get back to being authentic. Every symptom in your life is trying to get you back to live by your intrinsic value. And all the derivative values are all going to create symptoms to get you back there. The breakthrough experience, where you learn how to master your mind and master your life, there's more than 7 personal development tools in there. That's just the minimum amount. You can't hang out with me for 24, 25 hours, because that's what that program is, without picking up on something that's going to be inspiring and useful for your life. I've been researching for 50 years on human behavior, and I'm going to download a pile of material on there, and you're going to be able to practically apply it, because I'm going to make you go through it and apply the material and teach you the difference between living an intrinsic life that's inspired versus an extrinsically driven life that's, drained and basically out of duty instead of design. I absolutely love sharing the information. I know I've had thousands and thousands of people send thank you letters from that program. I'm certain it will make a difference in your life. It was an idea whose time has come when I first doing it. I've been doing it 33 and a half years now, and I've done it 1,150 times, that program. And I keep doing it. I keep having people wanting to learn about it. There's 100,000 people that have been to it at least. And I'm certain that it can make a difference in your life. So please take advantage of this. It's an opportunity of a lifetime to come and do it. It's gold mine. I ask people at the end of the breakthrough experience, how many of you have learned something this weekend you would not have ever learned if you hadn't been here? Every hand goes up, week after week after week. Powerful information that can make a difference in your life. If you want to reinvent the wheel, fine. But if you want to stand on the shoulders of giants, come to the breakthrough experience. If you want to expand your game in each of those areas, come. If you basically want to go and break through limitations and be inspired by your life and have vitality in life and take your business or finance to new levels and show you how to break through fears and guilt and pride and shame and all the distracting emotions, come to the breakthrough experience. I know what you learn there is going to be valuable for the rest of your life. So I just want to share something on intrinsic versus extrinsic value, authentic self, because I'm certain that can make a difference in your life. I've been I've been involved in researching human values since age 23. That's 45 years I've been involved in researching and teaching that, teaching for 50 years. And that is the most important thing I could get across to you, is how important it is to get congruent and live alignment with what you value most. That liberates you. That's where you're going to actually make the biggest contribution to the world and serve the most people in the most efficient way. So thank you for being with me today. Come and join me at the breakthrough experience so I can make a difference in your life live, one-on-one. I can actually help you one-on-one make that difference. And until next week, thank you for joining me for this little presentation. If you get a value out of these presentations, please share the message with people. Share it, send it to your database, let people know about it. If this has been of any value to you, if you know somebody you care about, get it to them. The more people we get exposed to the information like that, the more we can make a difference. And if you surround yourself with people that are aware and more likely to be fulfilled and inspired, you end up having a culture that you get to participate in that's inspiring. You don't have to be sitting there being victims of history. You can be masters of destiny. So until next week, I'll see you then. And I look forward to seeing you at the Breakthrough Experience.